Hi, this is a philosophical angle, defining concepts in current media. I am your host, Chris Angle. I'm the author of 4 books on philosophy, one of which is The Nature of Aesthetics. These books are available free for viewing at www.philosophypublishing.com. They are also available free upon request as an attachment if you go to the website and look up the email. Along with me are the panelists, Dr. Mark Brennan, professor at the Stern School of Business, New York University. Welcome, Mark.
Thanks, Chris.
And along with us is Rick Samuelson. He graduated from Yale, has an MBA from Wharton, an MA from Tufts. He was in the investment banking industry for many years and is now retired and in the venture capitalist business. The purpose of the philosophical angle is to examine the nature of concepts being used in current media and compare the essence of the concept with the usage and circumstances in which the term is being used. So let's get right at it for this week's topic, and that is, why does the left dislike America? Why does the left dislike marriage? They don't really have a great opinion of the United States. We saw President Obama take a kind of a whirlwind tour throughout the world, apologizing for the U.S. Why is that? You know, if you ever speak with somebody of the left, a progressive leftist, about why somebody wouldn't like somebody from America or America itself, they say it's because we are there. And you kind of go, well, so what? So what if we're there? Well, they'll tell you, well, because they don't like us and we're bad. So you kind of go like, what? It doesn't really make sense. But that's their reaction. So let's stop here and go back and decide what is, I've used the word leftist. What is that? Well, I'm using it here as a definition for a leftist as a socialist. And I'm going to say that there are 2 types of socialism. One is just a pure tax and spend. You make a profit, the socialist sweeps in, takes a large chunk of that, takes it out, and does what they want to do, which is entitlements and welfare in some form or another. And so they take the means of production and goods and services and they use it to whatever, however they want to use it for their just purposes within society. Okay, they want to be just. And then the other type of socialist, though, is what I'll call a progressive socialist, a statist, a total government statist. And that really comes from this idea, I think, had its origins 2,400 years ago with Plato and his writings called The Republic. And in it, Plato wrote about the philosopher kings, and they would be the ones that would be the just rulers of society. And how to get there was by education, by training, by the government taking the best individuals, putting them in as trained philosophers, educating them, and they will run a society, and it will be just because they'll have great rulers. Okay, so why is that? Why is it that the left has to control the production, wants to get the whole, really, it's not only controlling production, what they really want to do is control the profits from production of goods and services. Because once you get the profits, then you can do whatever you want. You really control society and you control the companies. So, the first thing is, it was a key to what a leftist or a progressive leftist tells you in reaction to your policies let's say overseas or something. They say, well, we are inherently bad, and that's the difference between a progressive leftist and a conservative. The leftist feels that we are inherently bad, that man's nature is inherently bad and cannot be trusted. And that thus our policies are inherently corrupt. And so you're probably going, what? Do they really do? Well, let's talk about that a little bit further. First, for example, we think that the leftist thinks that we're inherently bad. The other person, in other words, that you're dealing with outside of the philosopher kings, is inherently bad, cannot be trusted, and they need to control those entities to make them good and just, and through the production of goods and services by the philosopher kings. And that's okay, because the progressive left knows that they are good and just, so the policies that they put in place will be to that end, where all will be just. Now the conservative, on the other hand, he believes that other people are inherently good. They can be trusted until otherwise shown to be bad, which is actually a tenet of modern society, of modern U.S. society, since the inception of the Constitution. In other words, you're innocent until proven guilty. And when you can trust somebody else, and you believe that they're inherently good, trust automatically comes from this. And when trust comes from this, you can get further cooperation. And what is the essence, the purpose of all cooperation is to produce things together and to bring us up, to produce goods and services and bring us up away from misery. So when you trust other people inherently, the natural outgrowth of this is furthering the efficiency of production of goods and services. And this accrues wealth. When you have a society such as the United States over the last 200 years, the production of wealth by individuals has been massive, and thus a power. And so with all this wealth that has been produced by the individuals of society comes a power also. America's a natural leader throughout the world. But this is an anathema to the progressive leftist, because we are inherently bad. And so we shouldn't lead the world. Okay. So, but now you ask, well, Chris, you mentioned something earlier about marriage. Why would they be against marriage? Something kind of insignificant within the total scheme of things, I would think, certainly within the total realm of production of goods and services. Well, marriage is actually cooperation between a man and a woman, and it has with it the responsibility of the upbringing and education of children together through that cooperation. But remember, the leftist progressive would think that that's inherently bad, because our beliefs we are not inherently good, we are inherently bad. So they would want to disrupt that. In other words, a single family, a single parent is better for their purposes, because the upbringing of a child by a single parent is more difficult. Therefore, they need the state to help come in and take the child right from inception, or should I say conception, right up to death. And the way to do that, in fact, President Obama, one of his things that he suggested in this, since he's been president, is that he would like the government to start funding health care, not health care, well, in addition to that, fund child care, preschool child care. Once you get them into school, then you get public schools Then you put your curriculum inside the public schools, which they're doing. And then finally, from public school into a public educational, such as a college. And then from there into the production of goods and services, the profits of which they will control. So now that I've made a little opening speech, let's get some response from our panelists. Rick and Mark, why don't you speak out as you will, if you have any thoughts. Anybody who would like to start?
Go ahead, Rick.
Well, there are quite a few ideas there. I think I would refine the concept of conservatives believing in the good of people generally as the good of people in the aggregate. In other words, it's the sum total of their actions that lead to, and the freedom to enjoy those actions, and the fruit of those actions that leads to economic betterment for the larger society. There are, of course, individuals who will always be miscreants, and I think conservatives are the first to acknowledge that, and the first to want to take action to ensure that they don't derail the rest of us. But that aside, on the subject of marriage, I think it's even a little more sinister than that. I think marriage, in the view of many liberals, is either neutral or slightly negative because it partly interferes with indoctrination at the school level. So if you've got your parents, bring you to church or some other religious institution, or having you join the Boy Scouts, or exposing you to experiences that are outside of the liberal agenda, or potentially outside of the liberal agenda, it's a form of interference. And while they may not couch their criticism in precisely those terms, because it might arouse too much antipathy, outward antipathy, expose the antipathy, I think that's pretty much implicit in their attitude. It was interesting, the other day O'Reilly announced that, well, if you want to look at the problem with black youths and crime, look at the fact that 73% of black youth now are born out of wedlock. And of course, there was the predictable reaction from racially oriented groups and the ACLU and all the various friends of the liberal estate, just because he cited a statistic and at least broached a subject that seems to be taboo, and at least in the mainstream newspapers and media. So, and he's still experiencing the consequences of that, being criticized left and right, and just for saying that. I find it very interesting.
Yeah, Orwell called it crime thought, and so Bill O'Reilly is guilty of crime thought. But Chris, I want to touch on something that Rick brought up right at the very beginning, and I think he and I are both in the same camp, that you kind of have a fundamental misunderstanding of what conservatives and progressives think of man in the abstract. In Federalist 51, number 51, James Madison wrote, "If men were angels, there would be no need of government." And he said that because men are not angels. And conservatives believe that men are not angels and that they're driven by their passions and their wants and original sin, if you want to call it that. And they can't be perfected. And because of that, we have to have government and rule to keep everybody in line. Liberals believe that if we just have, that everybody can be perfected, that intrinsically we're all great people, we just need to be enlightened. And once we're enlightened by either the Politburo or Karl Marx or Fidel Castro and his revolution. It will be heaven on earth. They will immanentize the eschaton, as William F. Buckley called it. So I will part with you right there and just remind you that conservatives do not trust people, liberals do. That's a big difference that I think Rick and I are on one side of the fence with you on this. You broke the progressive movement into two groups. I think you left out a third. The first one was the tax and spenders, and they want to grab profits. I think what they actually want to grab in true Marxist fashion is the means of production, but I'll agree with you that by grabbing profits, it's an intermediate step before we finally grab the means of production. Because once if you grab all the profits, eventually you'll have all the capital and you will own the means of production.
Right.
And then you talked about the statists. I don't disagree with your taxonomy on either of these two, but I think in the statists, that's where we put the Republican Party. Show me a cabinet level office that a Republican president has abolished since he got in, and I'll show you 10 that he's input. The last president to abolish a cabinet level office was Jimmy Carter in abolishing the Civil Aeronautics Board and the Interstate Commerce Commission. The Republicans have done nothing but grow the state. They are statists. And then there's a third group that you forgot to mention in your divisions, and those are the foreign policy progressives. Those are today's Trotskyists, otherwise known as neocons, who are insistent on fomenting global revolution in the name of democracy and will go anywhere, regardless of what the U.S. Constitution says, will go anywhere in the world and start wars to spread quote-unquote democracy, which is not really what these countries need. They need property rights. So how does marriage fit into all that, and why do progressives hate marriage? I don't know. I was kind of thinking progressives love marriage because all I see is they want to keep expanding marriage to any imaginable, remember we all took stats, any imaginable combination, or in this case, permutation. Why limit it to two people? As long as we're going to get rid of the original meaning of marriage, can I marry my brother? That would be a gay marriage, right? Can I marry my sister? Can my brother and I marry my sister? Can I marry my mother? I mean, where does it stop? It's not going to stop. But I don't see them hating marriage. I see them kind of coming in and co-opting it such that it now becomes a meaningless thing where any pairing works. And, as long as you can avoid the estate tax, that's the only benefit they care about. That's what brought this suit in the first place. Two lesbians were married. The woman's upset that she paid $360,000 in New York State's estate tax, and she wanted her money back. And she got it. She's going to get it back. And the rest of us are going to be stuck with the definition of marriage being flushed down the toilet.
Right. Well, broadening the definition of marriage is one way to disparage it. Minor point. Let's get back to something that Rick said a little bit earlier about indoctrination. I find it there's a parallel between indoctrination, or the will and desire to indoctrinate citizens of a state, and the progressive left. In other words, the more you are a progressive left, the more you want or have the need to have indoctrination present on your subjects throughout their lives. Do you think such a parallel can be made, guys?
I'm sorry, I missed that last part. Parallel with what?
Do you think that there's a parallel between the statist, the leftist, progressive statist, and the need for indoctrination as one of his tools by which to promote the leftist agenda?
Well, I've got kids in school. I just point to the fact that the teachers' unions and other elements of the left pay an awful lot of attention to scrubbing the curricula around the country, and if you look at the various texts that are being used today in public schools and the degree to which diversity is being promoted, and gay marriage is being promoted, and other elements of the liberal agenda, I mean, it's shocking the change that's occurred in the last 20, 30 years. And this has all happened very, very gradually, and it's obviously been a key objective of the liberal estate.
And why do you suppose that this indoctrination, or really the revision of history, why do you suppose that's a key element to their objective? How does it help them to rewrite
I think
history?
the theory is it produces more pliant voters.
So that they're indoctrinating the young to the extent that these views will give a greater proportion of the society to allow the statists to remain in power. Is that how I read? Is that how I understand it?
Yes.
Okay. I'm wondering, though, how diversity, telling children about diversity, or telling children about these various revisionist types of pieces within history, how that actually helps promote the statist objective. Any particular example you can come up with?
Well, no, I mean, it's not that, strictly speaking, information concerning diversity is somehow evil. It's just that it is replacing the more classical texts, and so there's a process of exclusion. I mean, kids have so much time in the day; they have so many years in school. They can only read and absorb a certain amount of information. And, they're not actually getting any smarter. And the liberal elite seem to think that the more we can move the body of literature and subject matter, particularly in the humanities, toward more progressive thought, the more we will have a progressive state. And I think, quite honestly, it seems to be working.
I agree. It really is. You take away the information of the classics, and critical thinking really is what's happening here. Is that I believe that they're taking out of the public schools the ability to think critically. And that is what is needed for an individual to go out in society, understand with whom he's to cooperate, and with whom to produce goods and services, and then from that profit from that to bring up his family. It's almost as
By the way, Chris, and the Republican Party's answer to that is STEM, science, technology, education, whatever, and all that crap, which doesn't teach you how to think critically or understand how to be a good citizen in a democratic republic. It just prepares you for a job and instrumentalizes education to become turns college educations into nothing more than VOTAC training.
Okay. Maybe we should take the Republicans and place them in two categories. For example, within the Republican Party, there are the conservatives represented by the Tea Party, the establishment Republicans, and then over on the other side, we have the progressive left. And I don't know if within that progressive left or on the Democratic side, do they have any moderate or old-time Democrats left in there? Anybody know of any? Or is it all the progressive Nancy Pelosi type leftists?
Yeah, they're pretty far left, but the Tea Party has one concern and only one concern, and that's making sure that their Social Security and Medicare does not get cut. That's the only reason the Tea Party exists.
I don't know about that. I'd have to disagree with that. I really think that they have some.
Have they called for the abolition of Social Security? I mean, they're all these anti-spending. Have they called for the abolition of Social Security?
No, but that doesn't mean that is their only objective, is to keep the Social Security going. Really, I would think that their objective is conservatism. In other words, American exceptionalism. In other words, promoting the value of the individual within American society is a concept and an objective of the conservative Tea Party movement.
Chris, they do promote some good things, but the quotes that you see again and again and again brought up by leftists are, "Don't touch my Social Security" at Tea Party rallies, which is nauseating and just typical of hypocrisy of people who have been gulled into this statist lull that we're all suffering from.
There's two ways to interpret that statement. One is that don't take my Social Security means that what Congress has done up until now has taken out the contributions of the individual members into the Social Security fund. Congress has taken it out and used it for other purposes, and thus the fund itself will be bankrupt shortly. That also can be an interpretation of that statement. So again,
okay, so just so that we're clear, you're talking they want to defend a statist program. Just that, we were talking about leftists being statists. They want to defend a statist program. Here's my solution for the security. Take a little bit of your paycheck, every paycheck, and stick it in a private account. There you go. There's nothing statist about that other than the federal deposit insurance that would be in that account.
Agreed, and that's probably the way it should have been, but pragmatically speaking, it hasn't been all that entirely throughout since the 30s, since the creation of the Social Security system. They have made their contributions in there, and probably in addition to their 401k, that they certainly don't want their Social Security payments that they made to be robbed by Congress, which is, of course, what already has happened. Any closing? Go ahead.
Their contributions went out the door the day they were paid in. This is a pay-as-you-go system. It's just a wealth transfer mechanism from those who are working to those who are not working, regardless of the net worth of either party.
I absolutely agree, and that's true. Guys, I want to thank you for being here. We've got here just a few seconds if anybody wants to make any closing comments.
Yeah, just one quick anecdote. For my son's school, I received a letter from the headmaster, which was kind of a manifesto about what the school's future ethic would be about, and it centered entirely on the concept of being a global citizen. And so I wrote a letter back to the headmaster, asking him what on earth a global citizen is. And it's so reminiscent of Agenda 21 and all this other stuff.
Right.
That I couldn't help but be shocked that a fairly rigorous school would embrace such a fuzzy concept. But there it is. And he defended it. He thought it was, a big step forward for the school. And despite my comment that you really can't be a global citizen, it's a legal fallacy. And where does the concept of being an American citizen fit in all of this?
Right.
Anyway.
Well, we're just about out of time.
This guy must be a big John McCain supporter who's so busy tearing down the borders. It must be his hero.
And we have to go now. So, guys, I want to thank you for joining us here on The Philosophical Angle, and we'll see you next week. Thanks for joining us.